Hello everybody, this is Mr. Rom and welcome back to another episode of the South Carolina Gamecocks Dynasty here on EA Sports College Football 25, where today we have reached the end of the 2028 season, so we're going to go recap to see what the year that was, what happened, and just kind of set the stage for another offseason here in the South Carolina Gamecocks Dynasty. We're 5 years down and we're getting ready for year number 6, by far the furthest series I've ever done on this channel, so I'm excited to get into more. Gamecocks still have a long ways to go after a disappointing season, and we'll see it all today. Now, before I get into it, the off-season will be this Saturday. The off-season premiere this Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so you don't want to miss out. March the 22nd. So we'll get to another year of the Gamecocks, but let's go through this one. If you're excited for this one, make sure you drop a like and you subscribe down below, especially if you want more Dynasty Mode content. I do know that I do have two older series going on, and with MLB The Show 25 recently being dropped, and PGA Tour 2K25 and WWE 2K25. There's a lot of new games that have been out, and I appreciate you all who have stuck with this series through it all, including my athletics as well, because you guys are the real ones for sticking with it as we approach almost 100 episodes. But let's not waste any more time. I've been rambling. Let's get into it. The year is over. The Gamecocks finished 7-6, which was not the season that we anticipated at the beginning of the year. Let's go back quickly and see all that happened. We started off in week 1 with high expectations. We were the 12th ranked team in the country, facing our rivals North Carolina for the first time in quite some time, and we lost 38-21, a bad start to the season for us. Knocked out of the rankings, all hope felt lost. Now, North Carolina actually ended up being a pretty good team this year. They finished 9-4. They started off 6-0. So in hindsight, it wasn't the worst loss, but still didn't help our case. We then bounced back by facing Wofford, and we beat them 52-3, so that helped. And then we went on a little winning streak. We beat Middle Tennessee State as well, 42-27. Got in the SEC play, beat Texas A&M 17-14 in a good game as the defense was starting to play a little better. We were back ranked, and we feel like we had a second, chance on life. And then the disaster happened in Kentucky. The fourth down game on the line, just cover 4, absolute blow up where Kentucky won it on the last play of the game. We let a defender behind us on a Hail Mary play. I don't know how you do that, but we lost to Kentucky 26-23 in a game we so should have won. And then after that, we were like, okay, we lost on the last second, not the end of the world. We lose to Alabama, who is not a good team this year. They went 4-8. Again, the defense blew it late. We were winning the game, and the defense just couldn't get any ice. Alabama's quarterback just destroyed us in this game, looked like a Heisman winner, and the defense was in shambles. So at this point, we were 3-3. It didn't look very good. Much needed bye week next week, and then we did beat Vanderbilt 24-16. It shouldn't have been that close. Struggled to beat the Commodores, who were a lot better than they usually are this year, but still, a game that we should have probably won more handily. Then we go to Norman and we lose 34-24. We lose to the Sooners for the first time in the series, and we're sitting 4-4, not too good, not in the best state. Our chances at a playoff probably eliminated at this point. But then we do go on a little bit of a run. We beat Ole Miss 24-20. The offense clutches up and comes back and beats the Rebels. And the same thing, we beat LSU 22-20. So we get 2 nice wins. And then we blow out Missouri 45-18 on senior day. That was the win I expected to see a lot more this season. It was good to have that. So we had all the momentum in the world. We were riding high. We had entered the rankings against Clemson, who we beat last year. And we lost 36-17. We kind of laid an egg against Clemson. And again, cannot defeat our rivals consistently. Through 5 seasons, we're 1-4 against Clemson, which as a South Carolina fan is unacceptable. So not the best season. We were 7-5. Then we had a bowl game. I don't know why it doesn't show up, but we lost to Purdue in a game we should have won, which was kind of the story of this season. We finished 7-6, 5-3 in the SEC. Should have been a lot better than that. As far as the bracket, we probably saw, if you were in the live stream, you know that the national champions this year were Georgia. They dominated Auburn in the final game, 28-0. If you did not watch that game, it is live streamed on the channel. You just got to go into the live section. It should be the last one on the docket. But Georgia's back on top for the first time in 6 seasons. The SEC was one of the premier conferences this year. We didn't even play the top 3 teams that made the playoff. We didn't play Georgia. We didn't play Auburn. We didn't play Arkansas. And we shouldn't play them again next year. So this seems to be the chance for the Gamecocks. We just have to capitalize. As far as the conference standings, we'll go through each conference. The ACC, here's how it turned out. Miami and NC State were at the top. Clemson only went 4-4 in the conference this year, down year for them. Stanford also had made the playoffs, or made the rankings. North Texas was the group of 5 representative. They were the best team in the AAC. UAB's reign came to an end this year. In the Big 12, Utah sat at the top. Kansas also made the playoffs, so the top 2 teams over there. In the Big 10, it was Indiana and Penn State at the top. No Michigan, no Ohio State, no Michigan State, no Oregon. It was a new team at the top, and it was good to see. Rutgers hung in there for a little bit. Washington had a good bounce-back season, winning 10 games. Penn State, Purdue was pretty good. They beat us in the bowl game. So, interesting year for the Big 10. It was almost like it had been flipped on its head. Conference USA, Western Kentucky was the group of 5 team to beat for quite some time, but they kind of fell off towards the end. Same with Kennesaw State and Florida National, all ranked. So there's 3 ranked teams coming out of Conference USA, so it seems like this conference is on the up and up. 2 independents, you have UConn, you have Notre Dame. Notre Dame, again, made the playoff, and again, they would have had a first-round bye just like last year, and again, they lost in the first round. I don't think this is the nail, but maybe this is what Notre Dame starts to need to join a conference. Maybe they join the Big Ten or the ACC because of all of these losses, and they feel like they should get a first-round bye. I know that NBC money is good, but just something to consider. There's also been rumors of UConn joining the Big 12 in some of the future years, so just something to look out for in terms of our independents. In the MAC, it was Central Michigan at the top and Bowling Green. They were the top 2 teams. Toledo was right there, but Central Michigan, Bowling Green led the way. Mountain West, San Jose State was the top team. This was an interesting conference. It was by far the worst conference in college football, and it's a conference that could be losing a member. We'll talk more about that because next up is the Pac-12. And the Pac-12 only has 7 teams. They had one of the best teams in the league for quite some time. The 12-0 Oregon State Beavers were undefeated, were going to the college football playoff. I think they were like the 8th seed or the 8th ranked team in the country. But the Pac-12 isn't recognized as an actual conference because they only have 7 teams. And they did have a conference championship game where they lost to Boise State. And with that loss, Oregon State went 12-1. And they didn't make it to the playoff. They got knocked out. I think they fell to like the 18th ranked team. Obviously, they won their bowl game, but an Oregon State Beavers team that's 13-1, a lot of people think they should have made the playoff, and the Pac-12 does not seem like it's getting the recognition because they only have 7 members. So this offseason, I fully expect the Pac-12 to add an 8th member, and there's 2 teams that seem to be at the top of that list, both in the Mountain West, which has 9 teams. Hawaii seems like the first. They went 7-6, but Hawaii's a big name. They play in the Mountain West. They touch the Pacific Coast. And they have some rivalries with some of the teams like Fresno State and San Diego State. So it makes sense they could potentially join the Pac-12. The other one is Air Force, who did not have a good year this year, but they are the only military team that, well, I should say that. The other 2 are in the American, which I feel like the American's on a higher pedestal than the Mountain West. But I feel like the Air Force wants to get on the same sort of level playing field as their counterparts in the military schools in Army and Navy. And Air Force does have some rivalries with some of the teams in the Pac-12. Colorado State being in the same state, Fresno State as well, Hawaii, but they wouldn't have Hawaii anymore. But I feel like either Air Force or Hawaii will join the Pac-12 this year. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But I don't expect a lot of realignment in this offseason, but I do think that will be the one that does happen. As far as our conference, Auburn and Georgia were the top 2 teams. Arkansas hung in there as well. It's kind of interesting to not see Texas, Alabama. Tennessee had a down year after going to back-to-back national championships. So an interesting transition period for the SEC because I fully expect Auburn and Georgia to be at the top again. The Sun Belt, Arkansas State was the best team by far, going 12-2 in the conference, even though they did lose in the championship game, mind you, to Marshall. And then that does it for the conferences. As far as the bowl games, I actually can't go through the bowl. Well, actually, no, I can go through the bowl games here. We'll take a look at the bowl games. It's something I haven't done in recent years, and I kind of want to, so I need to start doing it. So we'll go through the bowl games. Starting the week 1 bowl game is the Birmingham Bowl. Arkansas State beat Cal in that one. The Camellia Bowl, which is actually a pretty good bowl game for a week 1 slate between 2 non-Power 4 conferences, but Marshall fell to Central Michigan 15-13 in a close one. In the First Responder Bowl, Tulane beat Coastal Carolina. Guaranteed Rate Bowl, TCU over Northern Illinois by a field goal. In the ReliaQuest Bowl, Nebraska beat Oklahoma and an old Big 12 rivalry renewed. It was a close game. We fell to Purdue 27-24 in the Citrus Bowl. Military Bowl, Syracuse knocked off Charlotte. And in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, Stanford over Iowa State. Liberty Bowl, Temple beat Cincinnati. In the Holiday Bowl, North Carolina dominated Oregon. Did not see that coming. The Ducks definitely had it down here. The Texas Bowl, Ole Miss over Colorado in what some people considered an upset. In the Alamo Bowl, it was Rutgers who beat Central Florida. Fenway Bowl in Boston, Florida State over Tulsa. The Bahamas Bowl, James Madison got to celebrate in the tropical areas. They upset Western Kentucky. And we saw the first round of the playoff. New Mexico Bowl, San Jose State beat Kennesaw State. So the Owls, despite being ranked for the first time in their school's history, are still waiting for that first bowl. Another round playoff. In the 68 Ventures Bowl, Bowling Green beat Louisiana Monroe. The Cure Bowl, Toledo over Texas State. In the LA Bowl, Indiana knocked off UNLV. The Frisco Bowl, South Florida knocked off Southern Miss. And then in the Las Vegas Bowl, Michigan put 63 up on Arizona State. The Wolverines not very happy with their bowl selection, so they took it out on Arizona State. The Myrtle Beach Bowl right here in South Carolina, Appalachian State beat Ball State. Boca Raton Bowl, Georgia Tech blanks Army. In the Idaho Potato Bowl, Louisiana wins the Potatoes as they beat UTEP. New Orleans Bowl, Oregon State knocks off FIU, again showing the Beavers should have maybe made the college football playoff. In the Detroit Bowl, Maryland over Ohio. And then in the Independence Bowl, Houston knocks off Ohio State. The Buckeyes finishing 6-7 this year. Gasparilla Bowl, Virginia Tech in a nail-biter beats Kansas State. Armed Forces Bowl, old rivals collide, but it's Boise State beating Hawaii. Could they be conference members next year? We'll have to wait and see. In the Hawaii Bowl, Sam Houston knocked off Fresno State 36-10. In the Gator Bowl, it was Louisville over Vanderbilt. Duke's Mayo Bowl, BYU knocks off Clemson. Like to see the Tigers lose. Sun Belt Bowl, the Sun Bowl, Texas over Middle Tennessee State. In the Arizona Bowl, LSU knocks off UAB. Then the bowl we usually go to, the Music City Bowl, it was Kentucky over Missouri. It was a couple of SEC schools meeting in the bowl game. That's interesting. Going to week 2, the 4 bowl games there, and then we see that, but that does it for the bowl games, ending with the national championship. So next up, we'll spin where we probably spend most of our time is looking at our player stats to see how they did this season and kind of talk about their futures. As we'll start off in the quarterback room, where Dante Reno for the 3rd season was the guy at the helm, and it was a regression year for him. 2,997 yards, 22 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. The turnovers were a problem early in the season. I do think he did a better job late with that, but it just kind of proved to be Dante Reno's downfall. He never really took that next step to be an elite level quarterback. And next year, we'll need a new guy at the helm for the first time in 4 seasons. A new quarterback will be in charge. There's a couple guys. The only other one that got playing time this year was Matt Cockrell. He looked good in the Wofford game where he came into relief, throwing 4 touchdowns. He's currently the front runner for the quarterback position. There's also Telvin Byler behind him, who's also going to be a senior. Same with Josh McDaniel. LaShawn Ivey also has an out-time shot. I like Afia Kilgo a lot as well as a true freshman. Shaquille Brock is another good quarterback as well from Columbia. So it'll be very interesting to see who is the quarterback for the Gamecocks next season. As far as rushing, it's not going to be a question of who this guy is. It's Wade Mann, who rushed for 1,400 yards this year with 11 touchdowns. The goal this year was to use him less and to keep him fresh, but he was just so good, you just can't take him off the field. Wade Mann has been the heart and soul of this offense, putting up 11 touchdowns this year. He could go pro, I doubt it, so we'll have Wade Mann next year. We should have his spell back as well, Monty Soro, who was good in relief as well, 303 yards and 3 touchdowns for him. He will be a senior at the running back room. So nothing really sort of for debate there. It's pretty obvious who will be the running backs. As far as receiver, Ted Martino led the way, 43 catches, 693 yards, and 10 touchdowns. The Jacksonville State transfer really delivered this year. I hyped up Carl Saban more than Martino, I think, in last offseason, and Martino proved me wrong. He took the biggest step in the spring, earned a starting job, and became the #1 wide receiver with his play. The second guy on the list was Vernon Ryder, who had 41 catches for 551 yards, but never found the end zone. Ryder worked a lot in the slot this year as a sophomore. Saw his playing time actually go down a little bit towards the end of the season. He still put up pretty decent numbers, so he should get that role back next year as a junior. William Mann had the most receptions with 60 for 456 and 4 touchdowns, so he had 15 total touchdowns for him. Jason Beckett, the 4-year tight end starter, will be gone finally. 45 catches, 420 yards, 5 touchdowns. Finally found the end zone consistently this year. It's been a mixed bag for Beckett in his Gamecock tenure. He was a good blocker, but he had some shaky hands. So we'll see what happens at tight end with him gone. We'll touch on that in just a second. Mazio Bennett, the return specialist, got some chance to play at receiver this year, and he made the most of it. 33 catches, 419 yards, 3 touchdowns. I wish we would have found him on the field a little bit more as a receiver. He was so dynamic with the ball in his hands. Showed it a little bit late, and he will be sorely missed, specifically on special teams. Amari Argyle, he was the number 1 receiver going into this year, had a disappointing campaign, 30 catches, 393 yards, 2 touchdowns. Maybe he takes a big jump this year as a senior, so we'll have to see them. But I think Amari Argyle had bigger plans for him. I knew it was going to be hard to replace Tyshawn Russell and company and DeBron Gatling from last year, and Amari Argyle just did not fill those shoes, so we'll have to see what he does going into next season. Monty Sore also had a touchdown grab. Otis McNitt had 13 catches for 93 yards. Heath will probably be the starting tight end going into next year, and he is more of a receiving tight end, so we'll see what that does for the offense. And then Carl Saban, who I hyped up this year, I only had 5 catches, but he did have a touchdown. Should see his role expand more next season. He was the Wake Forest transfer who we actually recruited heavily coming out of high school, chose the Demon Deacons, and then transferred here, so ended up with them. Now we just got to do something with them. Also look out for Brian Kennedy next year. He might get a shot as well. Then we go into the blocking sort of things. I actually liked our offensive line. They did really good this year, I should say. Josiah Thompson, though, will be missed. The starting right tackle, who's our impact player. He will be graduating. Roundtree will also be graduating. Amari Big Hill had a down year. He will be back. We saw him get benched in the bowl game because he was just committing so many holding calls. I need him to step up big time next year, specifically since we're missing both Thompson and Roundtree. We're also going to miss Tenard Smith, who did get benched, though, but got his job back over Davion Merriman. Merriman will be the starter next year at right guard. So even though we're losing Smith, we're not really losing a full starter. Colombo should be the center next year because we also are losing Jason Zandamela. So we are losing 4 starting linemen, but we do have 3 solid ones in place. And I do like Jamie Johns as well. I think he will be a 1-year starter at right tackle. So now we just really got to figure out what we're going to do at the left guard position. But we recruited a ton of guards in this recruiting class, so it might be an open book. Maybe Kevin Fye moves over to left guard. We'll have to wait and see on the line. But I expect our line to still be pretty solid going into next year. As far as the defense, we got to start with the captain, Bryce Reeves, who had 122 tackles, 23 TFLs, 4 sacks, 1 interceptions. In a year where our defense played really down, in my opinion, Reeves was still really good. I thought the run defense was still pretty solid this year, and Bryce Reeves really led the way at that. He will be sorely missed next year. He has like 99 play rec, so he will be missed. Torrey Perkins had an expanded role this year, and he made 117 tackles, 3.5 sacks, so I thought he did good. But, we kind of decreased the role of Colby Boyette from last year, this year, as more of a, just a early down linebacker, and I think that showed a lot in our pass defense. Torrey Perkins is good, but I don't think he's as good as covering as Colby Boyette, which I'll scroll all the way down to him. He only had 17 tackles this year, and he was really good as a sophomore. He's also a 5-star, so I do think with Reeves graduating, Colby Boyette might slide over to left outside linebacker. I want to get him more on the field because I do think he was missed this season, but Perkins was solid up the middle. I think, even though he had 117 tackles, I think we were still missing something in that middle of the field, especially in the pass coverage. Let's go into the sack department. The leader was Abena Onwuka, who set the record with 15.5 sacks. He has been an animal. The West Virginia transfer came over, and he has been the best pass rusher we've had in this series, and he will definitely be missed on that line. Greg Bodden, who came over in the transfer portal as well from LSU, had 9 sacks, and he's only a sophomore, so he might be asked to do an expanded role. I can easily see him reaching double-digit sacks next year with Onwuka gone, so I'm glad to have him back. Nate Lamb, who never really found a solid role for this team. He was, on the line, then he got kind of benched, and then he was kind of like a, standing up linebacker. Played a little bit of pass coverage. Never really had a defined role for this team. He ended up with 6.5 sacks. So I guess we never really tapped into his full potential because he's also graduating. It's interesting to see these guys that I recruited start to graduate. It shows you how long the series has been on, because I remember Nate Lamb was part of that first recruiting class, and he is now graduating. Derek Vincent Douglas, DVD, will be missed. He was probably one of the best transfers we've got in this series as well from Alabama. He will be missed up the middle. His stats will never wow you, but he eats up a lot of blocks, and I think that frees up some of those guys like Unbuka and Bodden and company to get to the quarterback. So we'll be missing DVD as well. We'll have a lot of front seven guys graduate, but we seem to do pretty good in that regard in the transfer portal. So we'll see if we can replace them again. We talked about Reeves. We talked about Perkins. Enrique Leal's a guy who I didn't really talk about this much this season. He had a sack and a half, but I expect his role to expand a lot. He was only a redshirt freshman, and I do think as a sophomore he will see his role expand, and he should be, by the time he be a senior, probably one of the top guys on this team. We'll go into the secondary, which I think was definitely the weak spot of this team. The secondary regressed this year, which was very surprising because we didn't lose anybody and we added a pretty solid player. So I don't know what happened this year in the secondary. We gave up way too many deep balls. Danny Kaufman, one of those guys, he had 3 interceptions, but as a safety, he got beat deep a lot, and that's unacceptable as a safety. I've expected more out of Kaufman. He has good development, so maybe as a senior he'll be really good. But, he's been a little bit of a letdown for us. And then speaking of safety, Sonny Gallen had 2 interceptions. I like him a lot. I think he was better this year than Kaufman, but he's also a guy that's been susceptible to the deep ball in his career. So maybe at safety we need to look at trying to free those guys up. At corner, Deshaun Heap had 3 interceptions. The Benedict transfer who came to Columbia, he's a good story, but, I don't think he was an elite level corner. He's also graduating, and we're going to lose our top 4 corners in this offseason. So the secondary is going to look a lot different next year, and we got to buckle up. Jeff Rubin, also a guy who I feel like never really tapped into his full position as a senior at a High Point, North Carolina. He started early in his career, got benched, played this year as the number 1 corner. He also got beat deep a lot. So I don't think Jeff Rubin was really all that good to be a number 1. I think maybe he's a number 2, maybe even like a number 3 corner. Yeah, that's probably Jeff Rubin's role, but I think he was asked to fill shoes that he wasn't ready for, and I think that hurt our pass defense a lot. The best corner on our team was Quinton Ford, who we got from Purdue this past all season. He played a lot in the nickel. I like Ford a lot. I think he did good in the slot, but he will also be graduating. Ogbongbemiba will also be graduating. I don't think he got the field enough. He had an interception this season. He played good as a junior as well. So the only corner we have on our roster next year is Malik Asante, who is going to be a senior. He's a 78 overall right now at 6 foot 189. He had a big play in his sophomore season, but he didn't play this year, and he's going to be the top guy. So I'm a little scared about our secondary going into next season. As far as kicking, I thought Marquise Otogwe did really good as his first year as a starter. He kicked 80%. He had 1 bad game. That bowl game against Purdue, he was really trash at, and I think that really hurt a lot in his percentage. But overall, Otogwe was really good for this team, I would say. Taylor Montez will also be graduating. We also don't have a punter on the roster next year, so we'll have to see what happens in that regard. As far as kicking, we didn't have a kick return touchdown, but we know Mazio Bennett had 3 touchdowns, including 2 in the Missouri game in the punt. So that does it for our stats. We'll take a look quickly at the rest of we'll look at the SEC first, and then we'll go into the national stats. But starting off in the SEC, your top passer this year was, of course, the Heisman Trophy winner by far, Ryan Puglisi. Had an insane season, probably one of the best seasons we've seen at a quarterback in the SEC since Joe Burrow, with 5,200 yards, 57 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He leads basically all passing categories for this team. Interceptions was Jamarcus Nani of Florida, who had 16. The Gators did not have a good season. Rushing, it's going to be Wade Mann with 1,400 yards. Ben Choice of Texas also cracked 1,000. And then your touchdown leaders was actually Niles Otis of Georgia with 12, even though he did play in a lot more games. And we saw Javier Hooper of Arkansas also have 11. In the receiving category, your receptions leader was Rashawn Wade of Auburn and Terrence Hendricks of Missouri. And your passing yards leader, it was actually Carlos Duke of Kentucky. I'm surprised it's not a Georgia Bulldog, but they do litter the top. Rashawn Wade's up there for Auburn. Nitro Tuggle, who had that great national championship game. Sokovie White, Terrence Hendricks, Michael Turner of LSU. We see Jeff Bauer of Vanderbilt, Darion Tilley of Texas, and Bubba Hampton of Alabama, all cracking the 1,000-yard marks. Touchdown leaders was Brandon Tufili with 16. Nitro Tuggle had 15, setting the Georgia record, even though his teammate Elmore was right behind him with 14. Also had Fries, Duke, and Jake Selleck with 14 touchdowns. Blocking, your worst lineman was Chad Pryor of Tennessee, probably why Tennessee wasn't very good this year. Tackles, Bryce Reeves. Sacks, 16. Chris Cole, that is a Georgia record. Marquise Beer with 15.5, and Abena Nwuka also right there. Interceptions leader with 10 was Amon Langanis. He was the best corner in the SEC, and he was sorely missed in that national championship game. I don't know if Auburn wins if Langanis is healthy for that game, but I don't think Auburn would get beat deep as much as they did. So that was unfortunate for them. Kicking, was there anybody 100%? Yeah, there was Cam Ravitz of Mississippi State going perfect in the field goal department. In terms of kick return touchdowns, there was one, Brandon Tufili of Missouri. And then punt returns outside of Mazio Bennett, there was one from Michael Turner. We'll go nationally just to kind of see what happens with the rest of the country. I'll go quicker through this. Puglisi has all the quarterback stats, but I do want to touch on Jose Jasmine, who was great as a junior, good this year as a sophomore. He will probably be a top 5 pick in the draft. Probably the best quarterback recruit we've seen in this series. Rushing, Wade Mann holds those regards. Touchdowns was Derek Stevenson of Michigan. Receiving, Kavian Quickly of Oregon State, who will be a high draft pick this year with 18 touchdowns as well. But 21 from Christian Zachary leads the way of NC State. My goodness. Worst lineman was Gabriel Rugamba of Charlotte. 23 sacks is crazy work. Tackles leader was the Gamecocks, but we obviously don't show up. 20 and a half sacks for Kenyon Neal of Wisconsin. That is insane sacks numbers. And then interceptions was Lane Gannis. Not sure why he's not showing up here. And then other kick return touchdowns, there was quite a few. Nobody broke more than one. And then there was 2 guys with 2 punt returns. PJ Makedovich of NC State and Derek Stevenson of Michigan. And I think with that, we'll go to an end. Oh, the last thing I actually do want to check. A lot of you guys want me to check records and stuff like that after this season or after a season. In terms of, there was no let's take a look at our records. So there actually have been some records that have been broken for the Gamecocks, I will say. Starting off with, we'll go with career. Dante Reno has set the passing touchdowns leader his career with 78. So he actually does grace the record books. And Abena Nwuka has the most career sacks for a Gamecock, even though some of those did come as a West Virginia Mountaineer, but he still shows up in our record books. And then Nick Harbor, if you remember him, had 29 total touchdowns, catches. So we've had a couple of guys break these records. As far as seasons as well, we have some of these changed. As we have passing Lenore Sellers, when he had 3,600 yards. We miss him. Raheem Sanders had 93 receptions year 1. That's a school record in a season. Passing touchdowns in a season. Lenore Sellers with 32 as well back in 2025 before he transferred. Abena Nwuka set the sack record for this team with 15.5 this year. So we have had a couple of records broken for this team. And I will say I do want to clarify something in the national championship game. I said that Georgia's record, I think, for touchdowns was actually broken. That is actually not true. The touchdown catches actually belongs to London Humphreys, who had 16 back in year 1 of the series. And Oscar Delp had the reception. So I apologize. I think I said those 2 stats wrong. But Puglisi, Nitro Tuggle, and Puglisi again, and Chris Cole's records for Georgia all stand from this year. But I think with that, we are finally done with the recap as we get into another offseason up next. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys have enjoyed the series. I know this year was a little bit of a disappointment, but year 6, we're going to set the bar high again. But thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you drop a like and you subscribe down below, especially for more Dynasty Mode content, because the premiere, remember, is this Saturday at 1 p.m. This is Mr. Rob, and I'll see you in the next one.